The champagne flute shattered against the marble countertop of the West Palm Beach Yacht Club, shards scattering like broken promises across the polished floor. Brielle's laugh died in her throat as she stared at Lydia, her best friend of 15 years, whose face twisted in a storm of betrayal and longing she'd hidden for too long. "How could you?" Lydia whispered, her voice cracking like thunder over the intracoastal waterway, the words hanging heavy in the humid Florida air as the party guests froze, oblivious to the real celebration crumbling before them. Lydia had always been the planner, the one who turned chaos into magic with a flick of her wrist and a spreadsheet no one else could decipher. Growing up in the sun-soaked sprawl of West Palm Beach, she'd learned early that life was a series of events you orchestrated to keep the darkness at bay. Her parents' messy divorce had left her with a toolbox of coping mechanisms, color-coded binders for every milestone, from high school proms to her little brother's bar mitzvah. But nothing prepared her for this, for planning the engagement party of the woman she loved more than anyone, the woman who'd been her anchor through every storm. Brielle Harper had crashed into Lydia's world at 13, a whirlwind of freckles and unfiltered dreams, fresh from a Midwestern transplant when her family chased her dad's tech job down to Florida. They met at a middle school beach cleanup, Lydia meticulously sorting trash into categories while Brielle dramatically acted out the life story of a washed-up jellyfish. "This poor guy's got more baggage than my mom after a bad date," Brielle had quipped, and Lydia, usually buried in her books, couldn't help but snort with laughter. From that day they were inseparable. Sleepovers on Lydia's screened porch listening to the cicadas, late-night drives along a 1A with the windows down, blasting indie folk that made their hearts ache with possibility. As they grew, so did the unspoken pull between them. Lydia noticed it first in the way Brielle's hand lingered on her arm during movie nights, the way her blue eyes softened when Lydia ranted about her latest architecture internship frustration. Lydia was studying at Florida Atlantic University, dreaming of designing eco-friendly homes that blended seamlessly with the mangroves, while Brielle dove into marketing, charming clients with her effortless charisma. They shared an apartment off Clematis Street, a cozy two-bedroom filled with thrifted furniture and plants Lydia insisted on naming. Fernanda the fiddle-leaf fig, Reginald the resilient succulent. Nights blurred into mornings with coffee runs to Subculture Coffee, where they'd dissect the latest rom-coms, Brielle always teasing, "Why can't real life have those grand gestures? Someone sweeping you off your feet in the rain." But real life had other plans. Enter Marcus Hale, the golden boy of West Palm's social scene. Tall, with a jawline that could cut glass and a family fortune tied to real estate empires, he swept into Brielle's orbit at a networking event Lydia had dragged her to. "He's just a colleague," Brielle had dismissed at first, but soon dates turned into weekends away, and Lydia found herself alone with Fernanda and Reginald, sketching floor plans that felt emptier than her heart. She buried the jealousy under layers of support, telling herself it was for Brielle's happiness. After all, Brielle deserved the fairy tale, the white picket fence in one of those gated communities off Okeechobee Boulevard, the kind of stability Lydia's nomadic childhood never afforded. When Marcus proposed 6 months later, on a private sunset cruise off Peanut Island, Brielle called Lydia sobbing, not with joy but with a mix of terror and exhilaration. "It's happening, LYD. It's real." Lydia forced a squeal over the phone, her free hand gripping the balcony railing until her knuckles whitened. "Of course it's real. You're glowing already." But that night, alone in her bed, Lydia wept into her pillow, the salt of her tears tasting like the ocean spray they'd chased as kids. Planning the engagement party became Lydia's lifeline, a way to hold on to Brielle without admitting how desperately she needed to let go. She booked the West Palm Beach Yacht Club, that sprawling venue with its wraparound verandas overlooking the water, where the elite sipped rose and pretended their lives were as flawless as the manicured lawns. Lydia curated every detail. Fairy lights strung like stars across the pergola, a playlist of Brielle's favorite artists, Phoebe Bridgers for the melancholy, Hosier for the soul, and a custom cake from Bakery on the Lake, 3 tiers of lemon chiffon with edible flowers that whispered fragility. She even designed the invitations on her laptop, embossing them with gold foil that caught the light like hope. The week before the party, tension simmered beneath their easy banter. Brielle would come home late from dress fittings, collapsing onto the couch with tales of Marcus's latest boardroom victory, and Lydia would nod, stirring pasta sauce with more force than necessary. "You okay, LYD?" Brielle asked one evening, her head tilted like a curious puppy. Lydia shrugged, flashing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Just the usual deadlines and dreams. But this party's gonna be epic. Marcus won't know what hit him. Brielle laughed, pulling her into a hug that lasted a beat too long. Her chin resting on Lydia's shoulder, breathing in the scent of her lavender shampoo. In that moment, Lydia almost confessed everything. The way her sketches now featured 2 empty chairs on every porch. The way she'd fallen asleep to the sound of Brielle's breathing for years without realizing it was love. The night of the party arrived under a bruised purple sky, the air thick with salt and anticipation. Guests milled about in linen suits and sundresses, the clink of glasses mingling with laughter that echoed off the water. Lydia wore a tailored emerald jumpsuit that hugged her curves just right. Her dark hair swept into a loose chignon, feeling like an outsider in her own creation. She darted from station to station, adjusting centerpieces of sea glass and orchids, ensuring the bartender had extra limes for Marcus's gin and tonics. Brielle, radiant in a flowing ivory gown that skimmed her freckled shoulders, clung to Marcus's arm, her smile a masterpiece of performance art. As the sun dipped low, casting the intracoastal in molten gold, Lydia watched from the shadows of the palm fronds. Marcus raised a toast, his voice booming over the speakers. To Brielle, my partner in every adventure, the woman who makes every day feel like winning the lottery. The crowd cheered, but Lydia saw the flicker in Brielle's eyes, a shadow of doubt that mirrored her own. Heart pounding, Lydia slipped away to the bar for a refill, her hands trembling as she gripped the cool glass. That's when it happened. The champagne flute slipped from her fingers, exploding on impact, the sound slicing through the hum like a siren's wail. Heads turned, but Lydia didn't care. She locked eyes with Brielle across the room, the distance between them feeling like miles of unspoken truths. How could you? The words escaped before she could stop them, low and lacerating, carrying on the breeze to where Brielle stood frozen. The party stuttered to a halt, conversations trailing off like dying embers. Marcus frowned, his arm tightening around Brielle's waist, but she pulled away gently, her face paling under the string lights. Lydia? What? You know what? Lydia cut in, her voice rising, raw with the weight of years suppressed. She stepped forward, glass crunching under her heels, ignoring the sting. All this, the lights, the cake, the lies. You're throwing away everything for what? A life that isn't yours. Guests murmured, phones discreetly angling for the drama. But Lydia's world narrowed to Brielle's wide blue eyes, shimmering with unshed tears. Marcus cleared his throat, stepping between them like a human shield. Hey, let's not do this here. Whatever's going on, we can talk later. But later was a luxury they didn't have. Brielle's lip quivered, her hand fluttering to her throat where the engagement ring glinted like a shackle. OID, please. Not now. Now, Lydia demanded, her hazel eyes blazing. Because if you walk down that aisle, Brie, you're not just marrying him. You're marrying the end of us. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant lap of waves against the dock. Brielle glanced at Marcus, then back to Lydia, her expression fracturing like the spilled champagne. In that suspended moment, Lydia saw it all, the fear, the love, the betrayal they'd both danced around for so long. Brielle's world tilted on its axis as Lydia's words hung in the air, sharp as the shards at her feet. She could feel Marcus's confusion radiating beside her, his hand hovering uncertainly on her elbow, but it was Lydia's gaze that pinned her in place, fierce, unyielding, laced with a pain that mirrored the ache Brielle had buried deep in her chest. The yacht club, once a glittering haven, now felt like a stage lit too harshly, exposing every flaw in the script she'd written for herself. Lydia, stop, Brielle hissed, grabbing her friend's arm and steering her toward the veranda, away from the prying eyes. The cool evening breeze off the water did little to temper the heat rising in her cheeks. Marcus followed a step behind, his brow furrowed in that boyish way that usually charmed her out of arguments, but tonight it only grated. Brie, what's this about? If there's something. Not you, she snapped, sharper than intended, and immediately regretted it. Marcus recoiled slightly, his easy confidence cracking. God, she was messing this up already. 15 years of friendship with Lydia, 2 years with Marcus, and in one breath she'd wounded them both. They burst through the French doors onto the wooden deck, the party noise muffling behind them. Lydia yanked her arm free, whirling to face Brielle with tears carving tracks down her olive cheeks. Tell him, Brie. Or I will. Tell him why you've been crying yourself to sleep for months, why you flinch every time he touches you like it's a transaction. Brielle's breath hitched, her gown catching on the railing as she backed against it. The intracoastal stretched out before them, dotted with yachts bobbing like forgotten dreams, the distant lights of Palm Beach twinkling mockingly across the water. You don't understand, she whispered, her voice breaking. This is my life. Marcus, he's safe. He's the kind of man my parents always wanted, the one who fits into their world of country clubs and expectations. Safe, Lydia echoed, incredulous, stepping closer until their breaths mingled. At 28, Lydia still carried the fire of their teenage rebellions, her frame athletic from weekend kayaking trips through the Loxahatchee River, her presence commanding in a way that made Brielle feel both protected and exposed. Safe as a cage, Brielle. And I've watched you build it brick by brick, pretending it's a castle. Marcus shifted awkwardly, running a hand through his sun-bleached hair. Ladies, I think I should. Stay, Brielle pleaded, turning to him with eyes that begged for absolution. He was everything the tabloids painted him as. Heir to Hale Developments, volunteer coach for the local youth soccer league. The guy who remembered her coffee order. Black with a splash of almond milk without fail. Their dates were picture perfect. Brunches at Avocado Grill, sunset walks on the Lake Worth Pier, where he'd slip wildflowers into her hair and talk about the future like it was a blueprint already drawn. But every kiss tasted like obligation. Every I love you. A echo of what she couldn't say to the woman standing inches away. The confrontation spilled out in fragments, Lydia's voice a torrent held back too long. She recounted the little things, the way Brielle had confessed, drunk on sangria one girl's trip to Key West, that she'd always wondered what it would be like to kiss a woman, her eyes lingering on Lydia's lips. The mornings after Marcus's proposals of forever, when Brielle would crawl into Lydia's bed under the guise of hangover recovery, their bodies fitting together like puzzle pieces long denied. You think I didn't notice? The way you light up when we're alone, sketching tattoos on each other's arms with Sharpie, laughing until our sides hurt? That's us, Brie. That's real. Brielle's knees buckled, and she sank onto a wicker bench, the ring on her finger suddenly heavy as an anchor. Memories flooded her. Lazy afternoons at Phil Foster Park, toes buried in the sand, Lydia reading aloud from dog-eared copies of Audre Lorde while Brielle braided seashells into her hair. They'd talked about everything, Lydia's coming-out story at 19, the supportive but distant nod from her mom over a shared bottle of wine, Brielle's quieter questioning, the internalized whispers from her conservative upbringing that love like theirs was a phase, a detour. I was scared, Brielle admitted now, her voice small against the crash of waves. Scared of losing my family, my job, everything I've built. Marcus. He makes sense on paper. On paper, Lydia repeated bitterly, sinking down beside her, close enough that their knees brushed. The contact sent a jolt through Brielle, familiar and electric, stirring the longing she'd suppressed with wedding Pinterest boards and therapy sessions she never told Lydia about. But love isn't a contract, Brie. It's not about sense. It's about the way your heart races when I walk in the room. The way you've been my home since we were kids dodging jellyfish on Singer Island. Marcus stood there, a statue of quiet devastation, his face paling as the pieces clicked. Brie, is this true? Have you been? She couldn't meet his eyes. I'm sorry, she murmured, the words tasting like ash. I do care about you. Deeply. But not the way you deserve. He exhaled sharply, backing away with hands raised in surrender. I need air. Without another word, he strode off toward the dock, his silhouette merging with the twilight, leaving the two women in a cocoon of regret and revelation. Lydia reached out, tentative, her fingers tracing the freckles on Brielle's hand like a map to forgiveness. Why hide it? From me, of all people. Because loving you means unraveling everything. Brielle confessed, tears spilling freely now. It means admitting I'm not the straight-A student who follows the plan anymore. It means risking the only constant I've known. You. The admission cracked something open in Lydia. A dam of resentment giving way to tenderness. She pulled Brielle into her arms, the embrace fierce and unyielding, Brielle's face buried in the crook of her neck. The scent of salt and jasmine enveloped them, the world narrowing to the steady thrum of their heartbeats sinking like they always had. Then unravel with me, Lydia murmured into her hair. We'll rebuild. Together. But as the party guests began to whisper and wander toward the exit, the weight of the evening settled like humidity before a storm. Brielle pulled back, wiping her eyes with the heel of her hand. What about Marcus? The invitations are out. Our families. One step, Lydia said firmly, her thumb brushing a stray tear from Brielle's cheek. That's all we take. Right now. They sat there as the stars pricked the sky, hands intertwined, the broken glass inside a distant memory. For the first time in months, Brielle breathed without the crush of pretense, the possibility of truth feeling fragile yet infinite. But in the quiet a shadow loomed, the fallout waiting just beyond the horizon, testing whether love could weather the gales of West Palm's relentless sun. The days following the party blurred into a haze of apologies and awkward silences. Marcus, ever the gentleman, requested space, retreating to his family's estate in Jupiter with a curt text that read like a resignation letter. I need time to process. Let's talk next week. Brielle respected it, curling up on the couch with a pint of Talenti sorbet, the kind with the gelato lid she and Lydia used to fight over. Lydia, true to form, took charge, canceling the venue for the wedding tasting, drafting a joint email to their friends that spun the postponement as a mutual decision for clarity. No drama, she'd insisted, though her eyes betrayed the turmoil. Brielle watched her move through their apartment like a force of nature, brewing strong Cuban coffee and blasting Nina Simone to fill the voids. At 27, Brielle had always been the dreamer, her marketing job at a boutique firm downtown a canvas for her whimsy, campaigns for local artists, eco-brands that echoed Lydia's passions. But now, stripped of the engagement's armor, she felt adrift, questioning every choice that had led her here. Late nights found her scrolling through old photos on her phone. Lydia at 22, grinning from the top of Mount Trashmore after a spontaneous hike, her arms thrown wide. The two of them at 25, arms linked at the Palm Beach International Film Festival, Brielle's head on Lydia's shoulder during a screening of Carol, the film's quiet intensity stirring something unnamed. One evening as rain lashed the windows, a rare Florida downpour, Brielle cornered Lydia in the kitchen. We need to talk. Really talk. Lydia paused mid-chop, carrots for a stir-fry scattering across the cutting board. I'm listening. It's not just about Marcus, Brielle said, leaning against the counter, her blonde hair frizzing in the humidity. It's about us. I've always known deep down, but I pushed it away because you were so sure of yourself. Coming out owning it, you made it look easy. I was terrified of being that brave. Lydia set the knife down, her expression softening into something vulnerable, the architect's precision giving way to the artist's heart. It wasn't easy. Remember my first girlfriend, Sarah? The one from the co-op? We lasted 3 months before my dad cornered me at Thanksgiving, quoting Bible verses he hadn't cracked since Mom left. I spent weeks convincing myself I was broken. Brielle remembered, the endless pep talks on the phone, Lydia's voice wobbling as she drove aimlessly along Southern Boulevard. You got through it. Became stronger. With you, Lydia corrected, closing the distance between them. You were my North Star, Brie. Even when I didn't say it. The air thickened, charged with the rain's rhythm and the weight of confessions. Brielle's hand trembled as she cupped Lydia's face, thumb tracing the curve of her jaw. Then show me. Help me be brave. Their lips met tentatively at first, a brush of softness that tasted of salt and second chances, deepening as years of restraint dissolved. It was a kiss born of familiarity, not urgency. Lydia's hands gentle on Brielle's waist, Brielle's fingers threading through dark waves, pulling her closer. When they parted, foreheads pressed together, Brielle whispered, "This feels like coming home." But homecomings aren't without ghosts. The next morning brought a call from Brielle's mother, Evelyn, her voice clipped with Midwestern efficiency. "Darling, we've heard rumblings. Is everything all right with Marcus?" Brielle glanced at Lydia, asleep on the couch with a sketchpad clutched to her chest, and steeled herself. "Mom, we called it off. It's not what I thought." Silence stretched, then a sigh heavy as Lake Okeechobee fog. "Oh honey, your father and I flew down for the rehearsal dinner. We can talk this through." "No," Brielle said, firmer than she'd ever been. "This is me talking it through. There's someone else. Someone I've loved for years. The line went quiet again, Evelyn's shock palpable. A someone. Or a Lydia. Brielle's heart stuttered. How did you? Mothers know, Evelyn replied softly. Just be happy, Brielle. That's all we ever wanted. The call ended with tentative promises of understanding, but the seed of doubt took root. Lydia woke to find Brielle staring out at the storm-cleared sky. Her expression stormy. Family drama? They're supportive. Ish. Brielle forced a smile, but it wavered. What if this costs me everything, LYD? My sister's wedding next year. She's already texting, asking if I'm bringing Marcus as a +1. Lydia pulled her down onto the couch, their legs tangling comfortably. Then we face it. Together. No more hiding. They spent the weekend reclaiming their city, brunch at Honey, where the beignets were still warm and the mimosas flowed like forgiveness, a drive to John D. MacArthur Beach State Park, where they walked the boardwalks hand in hand, the mangroves whispering approval. Lydia sketched a new design on a napkin. A seaside cottage with a wide veranda for 2 walls of glass to let in the light. Our future, she said, sliding it across the table. Brielle traced the lines, hope blooming. But as they returned home, a package waited on the doorstep. An unopened bottle of champagne from the party, wrapped in a note from Marcus, to new beginnings. No hard feelings. Guilt twisted in Brielle's gut. She texted him later a simple thank you. Drink soon? His reply was quick. Absolutely. Friends? Lydia saw the exchange and nodded, pride in her eyes. See? Grace exists. Yet beneath the mending, conflict brewed. Brielle's job demanded schmoozing at events where Marcus's circle overlapped, whispers following her like shadows. Heard about the split? A client murmured at a gallery opening, eyes gleaming. Everything okay? Brielle smiled through it, but each barb chipped at her resolve, making her cling tighter to Lydia. One night, after a particularly grueling pitch meeting, Brielle came home to find Lydia on the balcony, staring at the city lights. Rough day? Lydia asked, passing her a glass of Pinot. The worst. Brielle leaned into her, the tension uncoiling. They keep asking about the wedding like it's a ghost haunting the room. Lydia turned, her hazel eyes searching. And you? Do you miss it? The plan. Brielle hesitated, the truth a knife's edge. Sometimes. The certainty. But not him. Never him. The kiss that followed was deeper, laced with reassurance, but as they moved inside, a call shattered the moment. Evelyn again, voice trembling. Brielle, your father's had a heart scare. He wants to see you. With Marcus. The betrayal stung, not from her parents, but from the world insisting on the old script. Brielle booked a flight to Chicago, Lydia insisting on coming. We're in this, she said. The airport goodbye was a promise sealed with intertwined fingers, but as the plane lifted off, Brielle wondered if love could bridge the chasms of expectation. Chicago's winter bite was a far cry from West Palm's embrace, the wind off Lake Michigan whipping through Brielle's coat like accusations. She and Lydia arrived at the hospital under a slate-gray sky, the fluorescent lights of Northwestern Memorial casting harsh shadows on faces worn by worry. Evelyn met them in the lobby, her perfectly coiffed hair askew, eyes red-rimmed. Brielle, she breathed, pulling her daughter into a hug that smelled of Chanel No. 5 in desperation. Then hesitantly she turned to Lydia. And you. Thank you for coming. Lydia nodded, her hand finding Brielle's in a subtle anchor. Family's family. Richard Harper lay propped in his bed, monitors beeping a steady rhythm. His once broad frame diminished by tubes and fatigue. At 62, he'd always been the pillar, stoic engineer who'd traded snow for sun but never shed the Midwestern reserve. His eyes, sharp as Brielle's, flicked between the women, landing on their joined hands. So, it's true. Brielle swallowed, the room's sterility amplifying her pulse. Dad, He held up a hand, wincing slightly. Sit. Both of you. They did, chairs scraping like confessions. Evelyn hovered by the window, arms crossed. Richard's gaze softened on Brielle. When your mother called, I thought it was a phase. Like that boy in high school you ditched for prom. But seeing you now, I get it. Brielle blinked, tears pricking. You do. I've spent 40 years building Hales. Wait, no Harpers with your mom. Safe bets, steady climbs. But love. He glanced at Evelyn, a rare smile cracking his facade. It's the wild card. Messy. Worth it. Evelyn stepped forward, squeezing his shoulder. We were scared for you, honey. Not of you. The world's not always kind to wild cards. Lydia squeezed Brielle's hand, her presence a quiet strength. It can be, she said softly, if you play them right. The conversation stretched into the afternoon, halting at first, then flowing with stories. Richard's own youthful rebellion. A summer fling with a beatnik artist that Evelyn had heard whispers of. Laughter mingled with tears, the beeps fading into background music. By visiting hour's end, Richard pulled Brielle close. Bring her around more. Lydia. She's got that spark, reminds me of your grandma. Fierce, unapologetic. On the flight home, Brielle leaned against Lydia's shoulder, the Midwest shrinking below. That was easier than I feared. Humanity wins sometimes, Lydia murmured, kissing her temple. But triumph was fleeting. Back in West Palm, the real storm hit. Marcus reached out, not for reconciliation but revelation. Over coffee at the Blind Monk, he slid a folder across the table. Emails, screenshots from a mutual friend who'd seen the yacht club fallout. Bree, there's talk. At the firm, the clubs. People saying you led me on, that it was all a show for your lifestyle. Brielle's stomach dropped, the espresso turning bitter. That's not. I know, Marcus cut in, his tone even. But it hurts the business. My dad's asking questions. And honestly, it hurts me. Guilt crashed over her like a rogue wave. I'm sorry. Truly. I never meant. He waved it off, but his eyes were wounded. Just be careful. West Palm's small. Tongues wag. The betrayal wasn't Marcus's. It was the town's. The invisible currents of judgment that turned personal joy into public scrutiny. Brielle relayed it to Lydia that night, pacing their living room as thunder rumbled outside. What if they're right? What if I am the villain here? Lydia caught her wrists, grounding her. You're not. You're human. Flaved, brave, mine. The words ignited something primal, their embrace turning fervent, bodies pressing close in a dance of affirmation. Clothes shed like old skins, they explored with reverence. Lydia's lips mapping freckles like constellations, Brielle's sighs a symphony of release. It was intimate, soul-deep, a reclaiming under the rain-lashed windows, where vulnerability wove them tighter than any ring. Yet dawn brought clarity's edge. Brielle's phone buzzed with a resignation email draft from her boss. Recent personal matters affecting team morale. The betrayal deepened, the job, her sanctuary of creativity, now tainted by gossip. I can't stay, she told Lydia over breakfast, voice hollow. Not like this. Lydia's fork paused midair. Then we go. Start fresh. Portland. Or stay and fight. Expose the ugliness for what it is. Brielle waited, the architect's vision clashing with the marketer's pragmatism. Fight, she decided, fire kindling. For us. For the women like us who hide. They launched a quiet revolution. Lydia designed a community event. A Love Unscripted panel at the Armory Art Center, inviting queer voices from Palm Beach County. Brielle handled promo, her campaign's bold. Posters of intertwined hands against sunset skies, taglines like your story unedited. Marcus even showed, offering a quiet endorsement that silenced some whispers. But climax crested at the event itself. A humid June evening in the gallery's airy space. Over 100 attended, friends, skeptics, strangers, under string lights and potted palms. Brielle spoke first, voice steady. I planned a party to celebrate a lie. Tonight I celebrate truth. Lydia followed, her talk on designing spaces for authentic lives drawing nods and tears. Then confrontation. Evelyn and Richard arrived unannounced, faces etched with resolve. We saw the flyer, Evelyn said backstage, hugging Brielle fiercely. Proud of you. As applause thundered, a heckler rose from the back. A board member from Brielle's firm, face twisted. This is pandering. You're ruining lives for your agenda. The room tensed, but Lydia stepped to the mic, unflinching. No agenda. Just love. And if that's ruinous, check your foundations. Brielle joined her, hand in hers. Hiding ruined me. This builds. The man slunk out, murmurs turning to cheers. In the aftermath, Brielle's boss called. Apology in tow, promotion dangled. Marcus texted. You two are unstoppable. Months wove into healing. Lydia's cottage design won a local award, breaking ground on a plot near Jupiter Inlet. Porch for two, glass walls for light. Brielle thrived, her campaigns earning acclaim, their apartment blooming with shared dreams. One sunset on their half-built veranda, toes in the sand, Brielle turned to Lydia. No regrets. Lydia smiled, pulling her close. Only that we waited so long. Their kiss sealed it, against the eternal wash of waves. A humanistic hymn to love's quiet victories, where betrayal forged stronger bonds, and West Palm's sun warmed a future unchained. In the end, it wasn't a fairy tale but a testament. Love, messy and true, always finds its dock.